everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I am the Darklight Emissary, and this video is on some speculation regarding the future of the Loyalist Primarchs, which one is going to arrive back next in the 40k era here. This video is going to be a bit more off the cuff. I don't have time to write a script, so if I a little bit more than usual, I apologize. If I ramble on a little bit, I apologize, but I'm going to try to keep each entry about each of these Primarchs brief about my thoughts, because I was asked in one of the comments to do this speculation video about the future of which Loyalists we could expect next in 40k. So far, of course, as most of you know, unless you're very new. If you are very new to Warhammer 40k, I welcome you to the setting. It's a great one. There's plenty of videos already on my channel. I just recommend picking a subject and listening to it, and then finding wiki entries, reading about it, and then finding novels and reading those. Rinse and repeat, and you'll be where I am in 17 years. But regardless of that, my speculation regarding which Loyalist will be back, so we have Robout, and I'll just kind of go down the line of which Loyalists are even considered still alive, and even the ones not so considered alive. So to start off, we are going to start with Lionel Johnson of the Dark Angels. He is right now, from a lot of the rumblings and vibes I've sensed and felt over the last few years, probably the favorite to come back. And there's a couple of reasons for this. For one, the Lion is where he is known. He's in the Rock at the Dark Angels' home base, and it does note that sources know that only the Emperor and the Watchers in the Dark know where he is. However, that means that Rogal Dorn, being the chosen champion of the Emperor at this time, possibly knows that the Lion is there, or will be given the knowledge by the Emperor that it's time to wake him up. And I imagine that the Dark Angels, being kind of the dark, brooding type that they are, might have a little bit of resistance to Robout, but Robout being the chosen sword of the Emperor, the leader of the Imperium at this point, his authority is unquestionable. The Dark Angels would probably let him go to the Rock and find the Lion and wake him up if the Emperor reveals that to Robout. As far as I know, it hasn't been said that Robout was told about this yet, but it's a possibility. And so I find it likely possible that the Lion would be next. It might be a little too obvious though. If Game Workshop wants to kind of subvert expectations, they won't bring the Lion back next. That's kind of the obvious one with knowing where he is and all that. I do think that the Lion would be somewhat interesting though, just because he is, I feel like Robout and the Lion both share a lot of self-blaming for what happened at the Siege of Terra, about not being there to stop the Emperor from being hurt. So it'd be interesting to see those two sit down and reminisce about the past and speculate on what they could have done to try to stop the Imperium from what it became. And, just like any of these Primarchs, I would be interested to see what the Lion thinks of modern 40k, just like, how it's been interesting to see Robout being a fish out of water in this era of, faith-fearing people, when he came from a secular science era with the, imperial truth and all that during the Great Crusade. So the Lion, I would like to see him, but I feel like maybe not. But, only time will tell on this, ultimately. But that's my thoughts on the Lion. Next is Jagatai Khan. So, Jagatai is an interesting one. He disappeared into the webway around 9,000 years in the past. My throat, I apologize. And Jagatai is one I would like to see come back, for sure. Because Jagatai Khan is, he's become a favorite over the course of the Horus Heresy. I feel like he's one of those Primarchs that no one really expected to really like a lot, or the White Scars Legion, and both have become fan favorites for a lot of us, especially over the last few novels that have fleshed them out. The novel Scars and The Pathway to Heaven, some of the Siege of Terra books have been amazing to show off Jagatai and his White Scars. So I feel like it would be great to have Jagatai Khan come back. And I've seen some wonderful theory and speculation on cool ways he could come back. So Jagatai, as far as we know, is still stuck in the webway. And the webway it's unfathomably maze-like and insanely hard to get out of if you don't know what you're doing there. And Jagatai, for being a Primarch, he's still, it's the webway. If the Harlequins and the Laughing God, who governs that place, wants you to remain lost, you're probably going to remain lost or eventually dead. And if Jagatai made his way to Kamarag, who knows what could have happened to him? Because the Dark Eldar, the Drukhari, are probably one of the few forces that could possibly subdue a Primarch and then torture him forever. So I don't think that's what happened to Jagatai. And one of the cool theories about Jagatai that I've seen was that maybe it's possible that Jagatai Khan actually got chosen or picked or stumbled upon, probably at his behest, the Laughing God himself, Kegrak of the Eldar. And what would be interesting about that is, what if Jagatai Khan showed back up in real space and he was like half trained to be a Harlequin now? Jagatai Khan always taught the credo to his White Scars, to fight while laughing, to move fast, to be nimble, to be great swordsmen, all that stuff. And a lot of that kind of fits the Harlequins a bit, and it's the Laughing God. So I feel like Kegrak could see some potential in Jagatai Khan. Not only that, but Jagatai was one of the ones least adherent to the Imperial truth and to the Emperor as a loyalist. Jagatai could see how twisted and crazy chaos was without having to be no questions asked, loyal to the Emperor. He just knew, look, this is insane. We need to fight on the side of the Emperor because the other side is wearing the faces of our brothers and gibbering about mad gods in the war. At least this side still knows which way the ground is. So a lot of it was pragmatism by Jagatai at very least. So I could see him possibly becoming an adherent to an alien god if it gave him an edge against chaos and was able to help him save his people that much more. And that would be an interesting twist with him. Not only for him to come back, but for him to be possibly somehow some kind of leader within the Harlequin order of the Laughing God of the Eldari. But that's pure speculation. There's no hint of that happening, but I think it's kind of a cool one. I mean, it also has, some mixing of the, there's the great monkey god or whatever, Wukong. Jagatai Khan could kind of come across like that kind of figure, a Wukong type figure. And Wukong was also kind of this mischievous, laughing type of god in that myth. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Jagatai Khan. I don't think it's super likely he's going to be the next one to show up. There's been no sign of that. However, if Game Workshop wants to surprise everybody, he'd be one of the ones to do that. Next, we have Leman Russ. So, Russ disappeared into the Eye of Terror with his 13th Company of Space Wolves. And the 13th Company has reared its head a little bit, but still no signs of the Wolf Lord himself. So, with Russ, I think it's a high possibility he could be next to come back. And the reason for that is because in the current era, Fenris has been completely ravaged by the Thousand Suns and Magnus. And so, if word gets to Russ somehow about that, I'm sure Russ would like to come back and shore up his homeworld and his people again. And one of the speculations I still remember hearing about with Russ that would be interesting And this is appropriate because tonight, God of War Ragnarok comes out, by the way. I will be live streaming that tonight when it releases. There will be a link in the description of this channel for that if you are interested in hanging out tonight with us on that. But anyway, I digress. My point being, and even mentioning that, is, Russ, the speculation with him is that he, entered the Eye of Terror and possibly found not only one of his lost spears or the Spear of Russ itself, but that he sacrificed some sort of knowledge or some sort of part of himself for knowledge to defeat Chaos or Magnus the Red or something, and that he will come out kind of like a Odin type of figure, a lot wiser, possibly a bit more somber than his older braggart personality, and also kind of the opposite to Magnus the Red that way. Magnus the Red sacrificed one of his eyes, and it would be very interesting if his rival, Leman Russ, sacrificed one of his eyes as well. You have these two grizzled, one-eyed dudes that hate each other. It would be interesting to see those two rival up against each other. So they've kind of set the pieces there, and it would be very interesting to see a wiser, older, more somber Russ come back, because I never really liked Russ in the Horse Heresy. He was just a kind of a dumb, young, braggart personality, and I will give it that he and his Legion had some of the biggest character development over the course of the Horse Heresy and beyond. One of the final story with Russ is after the Heresy and after the Siege of Terra. One of his newest members of his Legion is wandering in the halls of the Fang during a Festus celebration and comes across Russ just in one of these side areas, just by himself, kind of depressed and sad, and he starts talking to this very young member, this very young Space Marine, about the past a bit and about how he regrets some of his decisions. And I kind of like to see that kind of character development, like Russ isn't just a warrior and a great fighter. He is very intelligent, like all the Primarchs are, but he even realizes he was a bit too one-track minded. So it would be interesting to see him come back as a wiser individual. And so I think it's possible for Russ to come back. There's no reason why he couldn't at this point. But again, as far as I know, there's been no actual rumblings of him coming back. Still, everyone seems to think it's the Lion, but we will see. And that's my thoughts on Russ, basically. So anyways, the Space Wolves are holding their secrets tight. The 13th Company has not spoken on where Russ is when they have been spotted several times in previous novels, like the Ragnar novels. So we do not know too much regarding this at this point. But that's really it about Russ. So next we have Rogal Dorn. So this one's very interesting. There is a lot of conflicting stuff with Rogal Dorn, and there's so much conflicting stuff that I believe that, personally, my speculation is that Rogal Dorn could possibly be alive. And there's a couple reasons for that, and it would be one of the most insane reveals if he was alive in several ways. But regardless, Dorn was last seen boarding a Despoiler-class battleship during the first Black Crusade against the Imperium, and he apparently died in an explosion on the bridge of that ship. And some of the information says both his skeletal remains, his power armor, his weapons, and fists were all taken to the Phalanx fortress world, not fortress world, but fortress, moving fortress of the Imperial Fists. And that, chapters inscribed their names on the skeletal fist of one of Dorn's hands. But then there's other speculation and information that says, well, actually, that's suspect lore, and no one knows for sure about the fate of Rogal Dorn. So, if Dorn survived and decided to disappear after that conflict, I think there's reasons for it. And one of the things that is often overlooked with Rogal Dorn is that even though he chose not to wage war this way, he was just as capable of being sneaky and secretive as someone like Alfarius. And the reason we know that is because he outsmarted Alfarius and was the one who slayed Alfarius. And Rogal Dorn had the ability to see through any of the pantomiming the Alpha Legion would do, where like the Alpha Legion would have members pretend to be the Primarch, and they would put on indistinguishable acting, so you couldn't tell who was who, and they would all answer as "I am Alfarius." Dorn could see through all of that, and in the book Praetor of Dorn, it even examples this during the Great Crusade. Dorn walks into this this giant palace throne room on a world that they brought to compliance with the Alpha Legion, and Alfarius is standing there at the throne, and there's like a few other Alpha Legionnaires in there, and the one on the throne's like, "Brother, welcome into here," and Dorn's like, "Shut up, you're not Alfarius. Alfarius is the one standing over there. That's Captain so-and-so, and this is so-and-so." And Dorn's basically like, "You guys engage in this really odd theater, and it doesn't work on me, at least." And so it's important to know that Dorn is not incapable of using subterfuge, so he often chose not to and felt it was unnecessary. However, he might have found it necessary after the heresy was over. Dorn has to be torn up over failing the Emperor ultimately at the very end. I'm sure we're going to get some of that in some later novels. Probably the aftermath of the fight, we're probably going to see a bit of Dorn and how he changes as an individual going forward after the Emperor is interred on the Golden Throne forever. So, if Dorn is alive, my speculation is that we have the latest novels from Annette on the Beckwin trilogy. And spoilers for that trilogy of novels. The third one's not out yet, but I'm going to spoil a couple things here, so, skip like 10 minutes if you don't want to hear anything about the Beckwin novels if you're just reading them. But in the latest Beckwin novel, or the Beckwin novels themselves, there has been pursuit of a mysterious character known as the King in Yellow. And over the course of the second book, a book in the book is found, and it's just apparently just hundreds of pages of names going across, and the names end up spelling out that it's Constantine Balder is the name. It's as many names as a custode, and Balder's been missing for a long time too. And so a lot of people think that the King in Yellow, who seemingly is building an army in some kind of warp fortress or some other dimension, something is going on where there's this massive, gigantic fortress with golden ships and clone troops and just all this kind of stuff that seems to be gearing up to fight chaos and being led by this King in Yellow. Everyone thinks it's Constantine Balder, but what if the King in Yellow is Rogal Dorn? And that would be quite the subversion if it ends up being the Lord of the Imperial Fists running this force and not Baldur. Or it's him and Baldur at the same time. That would be quite the wild one, We get to see the King in Yellow in the third one, and it's Dorn. And then with him, though, is Baldur as, a support leader. And it would make sense for either one or both of them to be this character, because both Baldur and Dorn are both, they can both be sneaky. They both know the value of subterfuge, and they both worked very closely together. So for a long time, it's interesting to think that, Dorn could possibly have planted that, as a misdirection, that's Baldur, but it's really him, and he wants to remain unknown for some reason. That is all pure speculation by me. When I was thinking about, Dorn and where he could be, why he would disappear. Dorn, just like Sigismund, just like a lot of his legion, you look at how kind of insane the Black Templars are. If Dorn is that insane, or even more insane, it would stand to reason he could be doing what he's doing if he is the one doing it as the King in Yellow. Also, that name, the King in Yellow. I mean, Dorn is the only Primarch that war yellow armor. So, well, that's not true. I guess Sanguinius technically kind of does. But my point stands. His legion was known for being yellow, and then Dorn wore gold. Valdor wore gold. So I think it would be interesting if it turns out they get to the throne and everyone's like, and it's Valdor, and it turns around and it's Dorn. That turns around in the throne and be like, hello, Primarch, Rogal Dorn. But again, my pure speculation, I kind of want to see that, though. It'd be great if I called it. But it's most likely Valdor in those books, if we're being honest. But again, that's my thoughts. Next, we have Vulcan. So Vulcan, there's been no sign of. It would be kind of out of left field if they brought Vulcan back right now. I feel like Vulcan was last seen fighting in the War of the Beast against the Beast himself, a gigantic orc, one of the worst ones since the Emperor slaughtered the orcs at Ulanor. And Vulcan disappeared in an explosion, so he's a perpetual. He can survive death. He regenerates, so he's got to be alive still. But where Vulcan is anyone's guess. So I'm not sure with Vulcan when we see him again, if ever. I feel like with Vulcan, it's anyone's guess at this point. Apparently, like, his legion has to find pieces of it and relics from him and once they get all those, he will come back. But there's not really too much on Vulcan, so I feel Vulcan's going to stay in the vaults for a while. And that's really it on Vulcan. Corvus Corax is interesting. He's next. The Raven Guard Legion. And all we know of Corax is that he went into the Eye of Terror. Hadn't been heard from for a while. And he, went there for some unknown reason. And it turns out that Corax kind of just went straight for vengeance. He's going for the jugular, and he was shown in a short story to be basically almost like a Batman of the warp in some ways. Apparently the warp has changed him. He's now a creature of shadow, not really a demon prince, because he's not an adherent to chaos, but the warp seems to have broken down whatever bits of the warp that were used by the Emperor to create the Primarchs has fully activated in Corax, and he can like turn into a giant cloud of crows. He has these like shadow claws. Like, he's not completely just a corporal form, although I imagine he can shape himself back to his normal form if he wants to. So Corax was seen kicking the absolute butt out of the Word Bearers Legion. The Word Bearers were running from this creature of shadow, and then eventually Lorgar himself appeared as a demon prince, but he stood no chance against Corax, really. And apparently there's a future told to Lorgar that Corax would be the one to kill him. So Lorgar is probably terrified of that prophecy against him, even though Lorgar probably wonders how that's the case when he's a demon prince at this point. But Corax is no longer human. Well, I say human in speculative form, as much as Primarchs are already human to begin with. Corax has seemed to change. So it's unknown with this change if Corax can really come out of the Eye of Terror back to real space or not. He seems to be active in the warp, just constantly hunting down chaos troops. So I don't think he would come back. However, there's been some rumor and something that perhaps Lorgar has come out of the Eye of Terror and is leading his legion with the rise in chaos activity, with the expansion of the Eye of Terror in their current era. If he's active out in real space, if Corax is able to lead the Eye of Terror, then perhaps we will see Corax again. But Corax does not seem interested, or would be interested, in my opinion, to lead a whole army again or get caught up in the politics like Robout had. Robout was purpose built for that, so it makes sense that he has kind of gotten right back into that, but Corax was never really that. And so Corax being a lone wolf like this makes sense. Whereas like, and Corax also was kind of cold to the Raven Guard. Corax was not the best Primarch in terms of like warm cordiality between him and his men. So it would make sense for him to be on his own versus like someone like Russ who, really seemed to love his men, love the Space Wolves. It would make sense for him to come back. Someone like the Lion who really cares about the Dark Angels as well to come back, to help lead armies, things like that. True leaders, I guess. So Corax will probably stay this lone wolf type character. It'd be interesting to see him again, but I don't think he will be the big reveal for another Primarch. So that's really it for the Loyalist Primarchs here. These are just some brief speculations for you to know about from my mind on it. The one I want to see come back the most, the ones I do want to see, I kind of like it when my expectations are somewhat subverted. So it'd be really funny if Rogal Dorn came back in the third Beckwin book if Dan Ebnet pulls that fast one on us, but that's a stretch. I mean, there's not been a sign of that being the case, but I would kind of like that just because it would be wild and it'd be also hilarious if I got that speculation correct. Now, more likely though, I do probably think it's going to be the Lion or Russ that we will see next. The Lion would be too obvious, I feel like, so Russ is a middle ground between not too obvious, but a lot of things have been set up for his return. So that's really it for this one, so I don't really have too much more to say. Please leave a comment on what you think will be the next Primarch to come back, or your favorite one that you want to see come back, or if you've heard any speculations or have your own headcanon on this. This is all speculation territory for us, and that's some of the funnest stuff to do if you have a good foundation of the lore to, speculate outwards on what could happen next in the setting. So please like and subscribe if you haven't so far. By the time this video posts, we will be on the cusp or hitting 300 subscribers, which is really awesome for how young this channel is. The channel is only around 2 months old at this point, and around 300 subs. So for those of you who have subscribed to this channel, I appreciate you so much. It's really cool to see that my perspectives and the way I do this, is something that a lot of you seem to be interested in. And, I don't think I'm not trying to take away anything from any of the established lore creators. I don't know any of them and I don't watch their stuff. And I feel like that's important for me to maintain some kind of level of, integrity to my own unique take and experience in the lore. But it's really cool to see, and I appreciate each of you for the sub, and for any of you just that spends time on the channel though at all, even if you aren't subscribed, it's still really awesome. Really appreciate it. So as always, bring your light into the dark places. I will see you in a video tomorrow most likely. However, I'm going to be distracted with that God of War game. It comes out here in about an hour and a half from the time of this recording, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's been a long 4 years waiting for the follow-up to that last game that I really enjoyed. So I hope you have a great day or night wherever you are. If you decide to pop in for the stream, by the time this video gets up and running with the rendering and all that and the uploading, we should be either right on the cusp for that to be streaming, or we will already be in it a little bit to get going on that. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you again for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will see each other very soon in some more videos. Thank you, and have a great day or night.